Welcome to Battlefield Firestorm. I'm the Counsellor and I'll be your bomber this evening. With the release of In the Name of the Tsar and its accompanying heavy bomber class, Battlefield bomber crews now have 6 different loadouts to choose from. Each was designed with a specific role in mind, but these roles are malleable enough to evolve with a good pilot's techniques. I'm going to show you which bombers do well in which situation and the bombing styles that most effectively utilise each loadout. But first I want to tell you about the various bombing styles utilised in early 20th century combat. Note that none of these bombing techniques are employed today. Virtually all jet aircraft are attack planes of one sort or another, and dogfighting is done well beyond visible range. Not so for Battlefield 1. Carpet bombing, also known as strategic or saturation bombing, wasn't even used in World War I, which is odd because it seems like that's exactly what Old Lady Ilya is made for. Examples of the practice do exist before World War II, but the Blitz saw the Luftwaffe engage heavily in the strategic carpet bombing of industrial centres and manufacturing towns. Dive bombing was also prevalent during the Second World War, although this approach often required specifically modified aircraft and pilot training to be truly effective, and unlike carpet bombing, is designed to hit and kill a single target. The torpedo bomber would seem like the obvious choice for this method given its payload, but you'll get far more benefit from it in the Ilya Myromets, which I'll discuss a bit later. The middle ground here is a technique called glide bombing, and consciously or not, it's far and away the most utilised bombing technique in Battlefield. You essentially tilt your nose down so you have a visual on the target from a bit further away than if you were dive bombing, fly straight toward it, and then start pulling up just before you drop your payloads in quick succession as you pass over your target. It's an almost intuitive way to do it, especially when you consider Battlefield's bomb sights are far more intelligent than an etched piece of glass. The barrage and firestorm bombers are best at this, but the Ilya Myromets also makes a decent go of it in an area denial role. The truth is, any of these bombers can be flown any way you like. Practice makes perfect. I'm sure if you put in the hard yards, you can be taking out assault tanks with your dive bombing firestorm Gotha. But to be truly effective, you need to know when to use what. We'll start with the light bombers. Depending on which side you're fighting for, you'll be in either the Gotha G4 or the Caproni CA5. Both are identical in terms of loadouts, but the rear gun is highly exposed on the Caproni, which also has 3 prominent nacelles instead of the Gotha's 1. It's the easier of the two to target and bring down in most respects, so grab the Gotha when you can. The first loadout's the torpedo bomber. Carries one giant torpedo of the type you'll find on most boats. This weapon is able to be deployed over water and self-propel to its target, but there's no guidance system and really no way to know where it is once you've dropped it off until you hear an explosion or see a hit marker. If you got neither, chances are your torpedoes joined the 9-man swimming contest somewhere out at sea. Thankfully for this package, that torpedo is also the single most destructive bomb any of the planes in the game can drop, being effective against over and underground enemies. Bunker turrets can be eliminated in one pass if you deploy its 2 demolition bombs shortly afterward, and the torpedo will frequently multi-kill any other infantry hiding there on maps like Monte Grappa or Empire's Edge. If you're attacking a stationary target, dive bombing is the way to go. Get as high as you can, then swoop in like a magpie on that turret, field gun or flak cannon, and by the time they hear the sound of the plane diving, you're watching them explode through your bomb sights. Torpedo dive bombing is effective in a number of other situations, whether that be soft targets lurking in enclosed spaces like the fortress on Fow, traversing tight terrain or choke points, and even transport boats.
Dropping a little early in a glide bombing run will give your torpedo a bit of room to travel. The rest of the time, the torpedo bomber is pretty well suited to carpet bombing, and from a really high altitude.
It's so destructive and they'll never see you coming. But it's the worst possible choice of playstyle for your crew. Frankly, you'll be lucky if they stick around. And although you'll be safe and your torpedoes will hit hard, the barrage bomber can fulfill this role at a much lower altitude with far more effect from your gunners. Speaking of barrage, it's 2 250 kilo demolition bombs plus 4 50 kilo anti-infantry bombs are perfectly suited for glide bombing. You should be able to maintain a medium altitude just high enough to let you face your target head on when you go in for a bombing run. When you master glide bombing in the barrage bomber, you'll be taking out all manner, and I mean all manner, of armoured vehicles in one pass. It lacks the wing automatic repair found on the torpedo and firestorm variant, replacing it with a spy plane camera that spots almost everything below you. Unfortunately, since the last update,
Most of the spotted enemy markers are invisible beyond about 100 metres, making the barrage bomber less of a boon for the team than it used to be.
that really sucks. The Firestorm bomber gets the councillor's seal of approval. Rather than 1 or 2 overwhelming explosions, the Firestorm carries 16 Cooper bombs of the type found on your ground support attack plane and 9 fire bombs, as well as the wing automatic repair. It's a fantastic choice in fog, where pilots and gunners alike can simply sweep the objectives that are under attack. The fire also doesn't hurt your friendlies, so using it as area denial on an enemy objective while sending in the ground troops is a winning formula for sure. The Cooper bombs annihilate any humans in their path, while the fire forces the rest of them to flee. It's best flown at a low to medium altitude.
The lower you fly, the more likely your front gunner is to take out half your targets before your Cooper bombs detonate.
If you get the dive bombing technique just right, it is possible to destroy unarmoured vehicles in one pass, but you'll only deal around 30 damage to armour. This is more of a finishing move than a solid plan of attack. If your target is in a tight space and can't escape the Firestorm, they're effectively prevented from repairing, and any support players foolish enough to get out of the tank to repair for them are likely to be incinerated. This allows you to come around for another run, rinse and repeat until your armoured target is destroyed. Obviously there are easier ways to do this, like with the barrage or the Ilya, but the point is you can take a chunk out of a tank with the Firestorm when you need to, and with its devastating effects on infantry, should be the light bomber of choice for levels like Fair Fortress and particularly vehicle free maps like Lupkow Pass. The heavy bombers, with lower manoeuvrability and one-hit kill weak spots, are far more at home carpet bombing large areas than they are down in the fray. If you've seen my Ilya Miramet's review, you'll be familiar with my thoughts on package number 1, the heavy strategic bomber, quote unquote, with 5 high explosive cluster bombs that are utterly devastating to large groups of infantry. This model, if you are going to use it at all, will be most at home on trench heavy levels and, like the Firestorm, pretty much anywhere infantry gather. I'd like to think it'd do well on tank free levels like Lupkow Pass, but the trench darts are even more useless in this mountainous terrain. The heavy demolition bomber, on the other hand, is a fantastic multi-role bomber with a 30 HP auto repair that doesn't need a broken wing or track, 2 demolition bombs and 5 50 kilo bombs, similar to the anti-infantry bombs on the barrage bomber. Get a repair monkey to join your squad in this unit, and not only will they make the leaderboard highlights for squad score, you'll be so close to impossible to shoot down that the enemy's morale will just wither and die. It's devastating against both vehicles and humans, and can only be taken down with overwhelming force, either multiple bomber killers from the sides or artillery truck. Be careful doing this later at night when there's only a few servers up. As I said in the review video, it's much harder to kill single hard targets in the Ilya than in a barrage bomber, so the best way to do it is to either glide bomb them as they drive a relatively predictable path, or dive bomb them from a higher altitude with the throttle pulled right back. Unfortunately, unless it's one of the heavier tanks, once you're in a dive with this, they can get out of your way pretty easily. So try and sneak up on them in such a way that you won't be spotted by other soldiers on your approach. The cliffs on Sinai and Fao provide great cover for this. If you do want to play it safe though, just cruise around at a medium altitude, carpet bombing anyone you come across. The heavy support bomber is a little different again, in that it doesn't have any directly offensive weapons from the pilot's perspective anyway, so it really doesn't matter as much how you approach your target. Regarding dive bombing, yes, your Firestorm cluster bombs will do a little more damage when grouped together, but this package is more about area denial and ground support than getting kills. The best way I've found to work with the support bomber is to alert your team that you'll be coating point X in fire and smoke, so they're ready to charge in, friendly fire being off of course. Then glide in and drop all your fire and smoke bombs, alternating between the two in one run, before circling the point for your gunners. It certainly wouldn't hurt to paradrop meds and ammo for your troops attacking said point, but use the mini-map for this as they fall straight down from your current horizontal position. That's it for part 3 on packages and tactics. For the hot tips on gunners and how to help them help you, stay tuned for part 4. I'm the Counsellor. Thank you for watching Battlefield Firestorm.